Singapore banks are super popular with investors due to their big dividend payouts. But are Singapore's banks' dividends still really attractive? And are they the best in Singapore right now? All three Singapore banks recently reported their earnings, so I'm going to break it down for you quick and simple. Now let's start off with DBS, Singapore's biggest bank. Now the bank actually declared a dividend per share for the second quarter of 2025 of 60 cents. This was actually up over 11% from the 54 cents per share that it declared in the same period of last year. DBS shares so far this year are actually up over 13%. And if we just count the ordinary dividend per share, DBS shares are yielding around 4.8%. Okay, next up is UOB. Now, UOB also reported earnings on the same day as DBS, but unfortunately they were not as good. And that was reflected in a lower dividend per share for the first half of 2025 of 85 cents per share. This was down actually over 3% from the 88 cents per share that it declared in the first half of 2024. That's also been reflected in UOB's share price, which is actually down 2% so far in 2025. However, given all that, UOB shares still give investors a yield of around 4.8%. And finally, we have OCBC. Now, OCBC saw its net profit drop 6% in the first half of 2025 versus the same period last year. It also declared an interim dividend per share of 41 cents, which is actually down over 6% from the 44 cents it declared in the first half of 2024. Again, this was reflected in the share price performance of OCBC, which is up only around 3% so far in 2025. However, given all that, it still yields around 4.8 to 4.9% for investors based on its ordinary dividend. Now, DBS is clearly the strongest Singapore bank stock, and that's mainly due to increased trading income and the strength of its wealth management business. However, all three Singapore banks still pay pretty attractive dividends. If we include all of their special dividends as well as capital return distributions, you can see around a 6% to 6.5% yield for 2025. So there you have it, a quick look at whether Singapore bank stocks are still some of the best dividend stocks to buy out there right now. And I think that they are. For more personal finance and investing tips, do give me a follow here or subscribe to my free weekly newsletter at timtalksmoney.com.